2025 DRZ400 was a highly anticipated bike for enthusiasts like myself and other dual sportists. We were supposed to get a bump in power to this budget-friendly do-it-all bike, and we sort of got that. When I received the email that my local shop was doing test rides, I was pretty dang excited. When I hopped on the thing, it felt exactly like the DRZ used to, and quite honestly, I was very pleased with that. Unfortunately, when I hopped off the bike and after saying to my girlfriend, I think I want this, and asking the employee, how much is it? It felt like someone smacked me in the face when he said, after tax and licensing and all the other stuff they throw in, $11,000. Now, for a budget-friendly motorcycle, that seems a bit outrageous. I felt a little betrayed by Suzuki, a brand that I have known and loved for my entire riding career, but harboring sentimental feelings for a corporation is nonsensical at best. Looking a little bit deeper into the bike, I realized that I could actually be wrong. Let's take a look a little more objectively at what the new DRZ400 is. The new DRZ comes with quite a lot of new electronics, and some of those are actually necessary safety features. Does it merit the $2,000 bump? I don't know. Having all of that tech does make it more expensive for Suzuki to manufacture. So, given that it is now a modern motorcycle with these added features, yeah, it makes a little more sense. Justifiable, objective. The DRZ really hasn't changed that much when you look at the power. It still makes 38 horsepower and has a much better low end of 27.3 foot-pounds of torque as opposed to the 17.9 foot-pounds that the previous version had. But when you look at something like the KTM Enduro 390, which is also a new motorcycle, it's making 44 horsepower and upwards of 30 foot-pounds of torque. When you're looking at it on paper, it makes a lot more sense to go with a motorcycle like that. Everything that I found that I would deem in the same category as the new DRZ, they're all making about 35, 40 horsepower, but they're not exceeding the $7,000 range. When you take a look at the DRZ400L, that one does have a lower power output of 27 horsepower, roughly 20 foot-pounds of torque. It's significantly less, and it is a smaller, lower clearance, shorter travel motorcycle, but still, it's under the $6,000 threshold. Other motorcycles like the Beta Alp X and the CF Moto Ibex 450 are still significantly lower priced just right out the gate. And for the case of the Alp X, it does have less power, but it's still far less money. And it does come with other features that were previously not standard for the DRZ. In the case of the Ibex 450, it's a 270-degree offset parallel twin 450cc motorcycle, which does give you much better power in the high and lows, and a much smoother ride for highway riding, which the DR is still a thumper. Also with the Ibex, the only thing that you're not getting is the ride-by-wire throttle with multiple ride modes. You still have ABS and traction control that has an off-road mode. Moving on to other tried and true motorcycles, the Big Red Pig XR650L and the DR650S, they are virtually the same motorcycle and have been so for over 30 years. They both make about 35 horsepower and 32 foot-pounds of torque and are roughly the same price at about $7,000. You're not getting any sort of extra electronics, but they've been proven to pretty much outlast the rider. Even if neglected, these things will still be on the road and will always run. Bear in mind, this is a very subjective list when trying to be more objective. All of these are still motorcycles that I would consider to be budget-friendly, relatively entry-level, and not something that's going to absolutely murder you when it comes to the financials. When comparing the DRZ to the likes of higher-end motorcycles, such as the Honda Sierra 450 RL and the KTM 500 EXCF, this is where we start to see quite a disparity in power and weight. The reason why I'm throwing these in there is that Suzuki has tried to make this a much more modern motorcycle with more modern features, advertising that it's more off-road capable, and also more on-road capable as well. The 450 RL is a supermoto that people have built out time and time again with moderate adjustments to the suspension, obviously, and the same thing with the 500 EXCF. No motorcycle is going to be able to do it all, but they're certainly trying to make it seem like it can. The 450RL has a 449cc motor and 38 horsepower, 27.8 foot-pounds of torque, and it's going to run you roughly $10,100 before all the extra fluff. The KTM, on the other hand, you're looking at a 510cc engine, which has a potential of 68 horsepower, 41 foot-pounds of torque, and is going to cost you a whopping $12,500 before anything else. I know that's a significant bump in price, but when you take a look at what Suzuki's trying to do with their bike and make it seem like they're doing, is market it towards that next step up in, it's not a budget-friendly motorcycle anymore. They've broken through that threshold. Depending on who you are and what your budget is, that may not really be an issue. Maybe you're just looking for something to go to work on or get groceries with. And I think the DRZ is a great bike for that. But when you bump up that price and, quite frankly, give it all these creature comforts, you're taking away from what it used to be and making it something completely different. I want to make that very clear. The DRZ4S is not the 400S. It's a completely different motorcycle, even though it has the same namesake. Enough about the numbers and a little personal opinion. Let's get into the entirely opinionated section. The test ride I had done was a ton of fun, and as I told you earlier, I wanted it initially. After doing research, the numbers do make a bit of sense, but it doesn't make sense for me to add it to my arsenal. It's too expensive for what I deemed a budget-friendly motorcycle. Granted, that's very subjective. My budget's not the same as everyone else's, and maybe this still fits in yours. For a lot of people that I've known, the DRZ was a first and sometimes last motorcycle. It's always a good thing to have in a stable, and I'm sitting on a 2004 E model, and they're still great for what they are. And that's really what we have to remember, is that they're great for what they are. It's heavier than other dual sports, granted not the heaviest, and they can still be packed up and trekked across the world. Are they going to do great at any one thing? No, absolutely not. Are they going to be great at being a DRZ? Absolutely, because it is truly a do-it-all bike. And adding these new features does make it safer, but it also takes away from the fact that this is a no-frills, bare-bones, minimalistic approach to what a motorcycle could be. For all intents and purposes, you could take this across the globe, stop at virtually any motorcycle shop, and they're bound to have some parts for it. The spirit of the DRZ has always been a model of self-reliance and independence, as where this newer setup is much more reliant on trained mechanics and electronics. In the case of my girlfriend, who is a new rider, I heavily recommended the older style DRZ to her. We wound up finding one for $800, and with a modest investment in time and minimal parts, we were able to get the thing running. For the rest of us that still want to wrench on our bikes ourselves and not have to worry about complicated electronic systems, then the old styles are still going to be around. You're going to be able to pick one up on Craigslist for far less than what you could get at a dealership. And for those who want sporty and new while still maintaining some feeling of old, yeah, maybe go for this. If you got the chunk of change, why not? But that's just not me. I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video, and I hope that whatever you ride safe. See you later.